Europe's cleantech policy, how to make or break it. Lots up for discussion, and to discuss it, we'll welcome to the stage Christopher Frey, Head of Regulatory Affairs at Sunfire, Juan Bernal, Managing Director, Energy Transition Technology Fund at A&G Global Investors, Miriam Zaitegui Perez, Spain Director at European Climate Foundation, and our moderator for this session is Bianca Dragomir, Director at Cleantech for Iberia. Let's give them a nice warm welcome to the stage. Bianca, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We're going to talk indeed about a new global order. I would say maybe even better, a new global disorder these days, but certainly about how this catapults Europe into the cleantech future. And we all know that these days clean technologies are at the beating heart of a triple challenge: the climate one, the competitiveness crisis, and also the security crisis. And that's the space where we actually need to provide meaningful solutions and actions. And that's particularly about what we're going to talk about in this panel with our excellent panelists. And we're going to deep dive into key questions like, can Europe turn climate ambition into industrial strength? Can the current energy security accelerate climate tech deployment? And if so, what needs to happen in policy, in capital, in execution in order to really make a dent into the energy transition story in Europe? So I look very much forward for this engaging, frank, and hopefully forward-looking discussion with Miriam, who's an expert in climate policy, with Christopher, who's a trailblazer, will bring us the innovator angle, from Sunfire, who's a champion in electrolyzer manufacturing in Europe, and Juan Diego from the innovator and capital angle. So let's deep dive into it, straight into it. Miriam, I will start with you. For the last years, we've seen that in Europe, climate policy has been very much intertwined with the environmental agenda. Now, this is changing, and it's changing fast. Has Europe truly made this shift towards really looking at the clean tech from this triple angle: competitiveness, climate, and industrial and security? And what do you think? Are we only halfway, or what needs to happen?
Well, hard to say if halfway, a quarter, or where. But, well, I think the trilemma has always been not true. I won't say false, but not true. I think all the climate policies, I mean, it's 11 years since the Paris Agreement, which I think it has been the main driver for clean tech in the past decades. So climate policies were also always weren't designed at the expense of our economies or the expense of our progress, despite what some voices may claim sometimes. But climate policies and the European Green New Deal, the Industrial Green New Deal, has been always about making possible the material, the physical ground where we place, where we support the planet, but we support people, and of course the future generations at the planet. So for me, the dilemma was never there, and in fact, it's proven. We have the ETS, probably we will have the ETS too, hopefully. And I think, and I will say this several times even today, we have to stick to the plan because it has worked. The data is there. My first background is biology, so I tend to see everything interconnected and from a very systemic approach. And I'm on Draghi with this. These goals reinforce each other. It's nothing again. They support each other, these goals. And on the question to the shift, yes, I think we definitely have shift politically, but now the gap is how to deliver and how we believe in the Europe project and in the plan we have since the Paris Agreement for Europe.
Thank you. And I'll hand over to Christopher. And I would like to ask you, Christopher, where is the biggest gap today, right? We have this new let's say, this policy shift, right? We are all kind of becoming laser focused on scalability, but where is the biggest gap today in ambition? Is it in political courage or is it in execution?
Okay, thank you very much. Also very happy to be here in Bilbao. It's a special place for Sunfire because just a couple of kilometers from here we're building what is currently one of our largest electrolyzers in the Petronor refinery with Repsol. So the Spanish market is clearly one of the most important ones for us in Europe. Sunfire, maybe just one sentence of introduction, then I come to the question. Sunfire is an example of, I would say, a successful transition from a technology startup with a good product to a mid-sized industrial company. So basically, we've already managed to sort of go a long way in terms of scaling, in terms of professionalizing the organization and actually delivering real-world, large-scale projects in industrial environments. And that's why I think we're also in a good position to comment on what's working well and maybe what's missing, where the gaps are in Europe at the moment. So in our experience, there is a good support for technology startups if you are in the right place at the right time. And for hydrogen, that was clearly the case around 2020 when everyone realized we need hydrogen to decarbonize heavy industries. I mean, we've heard a lot today about data centers, which is sort of the latest hot topic. But let's not forget about the hard to decarbonize heavy industries like refineries, like steel making, like fertilizers, but also aviation fuels and shipping and so on. And that's where we need hydrogen. And we were there in 2020 when this really took off, when there was a European hydrogen strategy, many national hydrogen strategies, and that really gave us some tailwinds. Then there were some good funding programs also by the European Union, which reinforced also the private capital that we could attract. That was called Important Projects of Common European Interest at the time. So that was national funding, but it was made possible under a European state aid framework, which was sort of easier to navigate. So that also worked well, allowed us to attract some capital, allowed us to scale. Where we are now is a situation where we need to manage to take this to the next level, which is creating large-scale demand. And this is by far the most important topic for us. There are some positive developments, but it all depends on regulation because we're building a new market, a new industry, and in the end we're competing. The molecules that we're producing are competing with fossil molecules which have been around for more than 100 years and where there is a totally established ecosystem and infrastructure and risk experience, etc. So you have to create that demand also for the, let's say, the newcomers, and that only works via regulation. And what we're currently seeing is a bit of different speeds of implementing this demand creation. Some member states, like Spain, are advancing well. Other member states, including my own in Germany, could do a lot more to do this. So it's very important that we create this coherency over time. So we fund the startups, then we allow them to scale, but then we also create the market in Europe to actually put these products on the market, to find customers and to experience and scale and reduce costs. And then we can conquer the world, then we can go to non-European markets, etc. But let's start here with creating that demand.
Thank you. Juan Diego, what's your take on this? Would you agree?
Yeah, I think I'm fully aligned with you, which is great. Cool. Investors and scale up. So yeah. I think that the main gap is, at least from my personal point of view, in the execution. So I think that the most expensive commodity for a scale up or a startup is time. And we are losing a lot of time in many stages of a life of a startup. For instance, permitting. So we cannot wait 12, 14 months for starting a project. So I think that there are many companies that are dying there. Or in the grid connection. So I think that here in Spain we are doing inch by inch some steps to get a better framework. But again, we cannot be with good product waiting in the queue for having the access to the grid. So from my personal point of view, it is something very related to execution, and we have to work a lot on that. Yeah.
Thank you. So I hear regulation, I hear execution, and just staying a little bit more with you, Juan Diego, because it's really, of course, capital is absolutely crucial for the scalability journey, right, of the clean technologies. And we've seen that over the past over the past decade, we've seen the global market value for clean tech growing 20% on average per year, and just last year was the record investment year in the Iberian Peninsula in emerging clean tech, with 768 million euros invested. So what do you think that would be the 1-2 policies that an investor like ANG, so much focused on the scalability gap and on the growth stage, which is so much needed to be covered in Europe and in Spain and in Iberia these days, would be, how would this policy look like to really make this, make a dent in the scalability?
Okay. So let's put a disclaimer, because as investor from time to time, the policy is not my expertise, my main expertise. But the reality is that at the end of the day, capital flows where the revenue visibility is. So I think that it would be, so as clean tech, we cannot afford to have a burden for being green. And as you mentioned, we should have from time to time equal variables as our peers in more mineral resource based. So to be specific, I think, for instance, if we could gain visibility on the famous CCFD, so these carbon contracts for difference. So if we are able to gain visibility of at what extent the value of this CO2 reduction per technology we could have, then I think that the projects will be at least more bankable, because we are going to have more visibility on the revenue generation. Likewise, I think that if we are able to promote these first-of-a-kind projects, where the public sector make a step ahead and they're willing to take some risk, then the private sector, I guess that we are going to be able to put larger tickets in some projects that otherwise we're going to be as willing as we are now to put. So I think that, for instance, with these 2 specific examples, we are going to be able to improve a lot, especially in these kind of high capex hardware-oriented projects.
Thank you very much for taking up this challenge of looking into policy. From an investor angle, I think it's particularly important these days. And it is also very important to be aware of the latest development in policy. Like we've had a few weeks ago, the Industrial Accelerator Act published, so it is the Made in Europe strategy as a response, basically, of Europe to what is happening to the leadership in clean tech that is coming from outside of Europe. If we look into this, maybe going to Christopher now, what is missing and what is needed for a fit-for-purpose, Made in Europe manufacturing strategy?
Yeah, so first of all, I would say that it's very good that we're taking this step, that finally on the European level we're getting serious about, on the one hand, driving forward decarbonization of industries while securing their competitiveness in Europe, so that we're not losing them to other regions of the world, because I think we all agree we want even the energy intensive industries like steelmaking, like chemicals, etc., we want them in Europe, even though conditions outside of Europe might at the moment be more attractive. And it's good that we're combining this with the ambition to also support the new technologies that are helping these old industries transform. And I think this is the idea also of the whole Clean Industrial Deal and the Industrial Accelerator Act. And one angle or one piece of the puzzle is to say, let's create this demand for the clean tech products in Europe. Let the steel manufacturers, let the chemicals buy their product in Europe from the innovative players that we have, because this is, as we've called it, a race, right? And it's a global competition. I mean, China is doing this, and I've recently looked at a list of Chinese electrolyzer manufacturers, so our potential competitors, not yet on the European market, but maybe in the future. There's already more than 180 companies doing something in the world of electrolyzer stack manufacturing, and all of them want to sort of conquer world markets. So it's important that for the foreseeable future, let's say 5 years, we combine the public support that we're giving to industries in order to transform to, let's say, sourcing from European innovative companies, allowing them to scale here, allowing them to experience, to reduce costs, and then be sort of fit for the global market and compete eye to eye with companies from the US, from China, etc. So the Industrial Accelerator Act, as it currently is a good starting point, but it has to be improved. Yeah? There is still room for that, I think, in the parliamentary procedure coming up. And what we would like to see is even stronger criteria for made in Europe, for resilience. And there are a lot of loopholes, there are a lot of exceptions. So basically these procurement criteria, they only apply to a certain percentage of, for example, auctions for hydrogen. Then you have a list of countries that you can work with. It's now called Made with Europe. It was used to called Made in Europe. Now I think also sort of bowing a bit to the pressure from certain member states, like the one I'm from, Germany. We've called it Made with Europe because some are afraid that this might backfire. But I think we can be self-confident here. We can put down very clear conditions. If you want public support in Europe for your hydrogen, for your transformation, please make sure that you buy from European technology providers because they are here. There is no shortage of companies. There is competition on the European market, but we need to bridge this critical scaling phase that's ahead of us.
Thanks.
5 years, 7 years, and then we're there.
Juan, does this match with your views?
Yeah, I'm also pretty aligned. It is good too. So, so I think that we cannot be 27 silos in Europe, and we should act as a united market. So it cannot happen that a Spanish company is scaling up here find any kind of friction to go to Germany or otherwise. So if we would like to compete against US or China, at least we should have a united market. And I think it is compulsory the very short term. Another thing that maybe we could learn from the US is this Inflation Regulation Act. Because from the time we are very obsessed with CapEx, and that's key for sure, but also we should think on OpEx. And it's very hard for us to have this kind of, let's say, energy costs where we cannot compete with them. So if we would like to have a strong European industry, at least I think that we have to promote this kind of OpEx reduction. So I think that with these two small things, we should empower a lot the industry here in Europe.
Thank you, Juan, for being so straightforward on what needs to be done. Miriam, after having heard an innovator and an investor perspective, what's your take about Made in Europe policy?
When I hear you, not only today, but I mean, as a representative of ECF, I talk to every actor implied in the climate change policy sector. I always talk about governance. At the end, that's the issue. How we rule all these things. But I'm going to take it to the societal part because for me, as a representative of the European Climate Foundation and also working a lot with civil society, for me, what is missing for the Made in Europe is the social narrative. I was talking before with Bianca. I'm from the north of Spain. I'm from here, where the industry was based, but raised in the south, where it was the agriculture, and that impacted till today. Has driven a lot of inequalities. So I think now if we want to succeed as Europe, we have to take care and not repeat mistakes from the past. So as far as the citizens don't see the benefits in their own pockets and in their own quality lives, I don't think any policy will succeed in the long run. And of course, this is not. I agree with you. Europe have to believe in the Europe project as one. We are late on that, and we late with in that sense. But also care about how we plan that regional inequalities when we implement industry. I mean, recently, for example, with the Sustainable Mobility Law, I mean, in Spain, it's not only a law about mobility, it's about the citizens' rights to transport, it's about regional cohesion, and that's what Made in Europe should be really about.
I couldn't agree more to this, Miriam, because indeed any transition needs to be a collectively owned transition, and certainly civil society is important so that we can actually avoid the not in my backyard
exactly.
Reactions. I would like to stay a little bit more with you and really ask you well, we've heard a lot of doom and gloom also this morning, talking about security, about independence, about the challenges that we are faced. Is there reason for optimism? Is there any silver lining in all these multiple crises?
I have the sickness of optimism, so I must say, I think that's why I do what I do, otherwise I would be a very sad person. I mean, for me, now, there's reason for hope. Who could expect that Trump will be a driver of the energy transition? Because he has making crystal clear that we are still, despite of the Green New Deal, very dependent on fossil fuel. And I think it's showing the case that we have, again, to stick to the plan. We have a good plan. We should not be doubting about ourselves and reacting to the circumstances, but sticking to the opportunity we have. In the case of Spain, and if Spain is benefited from this, Europe will be, of course. We have won the energy lottery, let's say. So, I mean, we have the sources, we have the geopolitical even, where we are based, the Mediterranean, Latin America ties. So, I mean, we can do this. We really can do this, and we should not be now challenging the ETS or all the path we have already walked, but continue to the plan.
Thank you very much for these doses of optimism that we so much need these days. What's the silver lining in this crisis, Juan?
No, I think that more or less we are all aligned in the sense that 2 years ago, to be green was luxury, if I may say that. So you have to pay certain costs, premium, to be green. But at the end of the day, what we are realizing here in Europe, at least from the pragmatic point of view, is that the same technologies that were baking this energy transition are the ones that now can ensure sovereignty, can ensure independency, can ensure a more reliable and independent power grid system. So from this point of view, I think that we have done a lot of homework. And what we have to do now is fine-tuning a lot of things, some of the things that we have remarked now, and we are in the right pathway. So we have to keep on promoting renewables, more resilient and flexible system, all the technology backing all those transitions, and we are in the proper way. And here in Europe, I think that we have a lot of strengths. What we have to do is keep on boosting that. Let's see where we are going.
Thank you, Christopher.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, if we abstract a little bit, or if we actually cut through all the noise and the announcements or by certain governments in the world that the energy transition is basically a hoax, etc. I think what we need to look at the numbers and what really happens on the ground, and that is basically clear that the energy transition is moving forward. The technologies are being deployed. They're getting more affordable. They're getting more efficient and powerful. So I think we have everything in Europe to make this a success. And you also see, I think these crises, these geopolitical crises and these energy crises have always been a catalyst for changing and adapting the energy system, making it more resilient. That was the case in 1972. Or the gas and oil shock. It's going to be the same again now. And we have all the ingredients in Europe. We have the technology, we have the capital. We need to see this as a common project. As you said, we cannot have 27 different strategies and silos. And I think countries like Spain are showing to the whole of Europe that their bet on renewables is paying off in this situation. Their reduced reliance on fossil fuels is paying off in this situation. Others are suffering much more right now, and I'm sure that many member states will follow that example.
And I guess that also narrative, right? We need to switch the narrative from, we are not victims of this transition. We can be architects of that. And sticking to that, maybe just the final round, quick interventions to wrap up. What would you think that's if you had to choose one most needed element that needs to change or needs to happen by 2030 for us in Europe to be architects, not victims of our decisions in this competitiveness, in this climate, and in this defense or security race, basically. What would that be? Let's start with Christopher, then Juan and Miriam.
Yeah, I'm coming back to my first intervention, my first point. It's we have to have the mindset that Europe is not just the birthplace of these technologies and an innovative startup ecosystem, but also the home of scaling these technologies. And then concretely, this means really following through after you have supported these technologies with generous R&D funding and scaling support to really say, now we're creating the market for them and allowing them to scale and take the next step and not disappear all of a sudden to other parts of the world where the conditions might be there, where the market might be there. We need to create this market here in Europe.
Scale. Juan.
I would say radical regulatory humility in the sense that I think that we should be less focused in the how and more in the why and in what. We should promote entrepreneurs and we should empower them, and also the investors side to allow them to look for the most efficient way of have the technological pathway. And then I think that we should put first in the priority list speed and trial and error instead of being more obsessed in many other things.
I love it. Radical humility. Miriam.
Yes, I'm repeating myself, but the climate ambition is about economy, also about democracy, which is also at risk. So we should continue to walk that path as we have been doing.
Well, thank you very much for this very quick and sharp, I would say, reality check on the state of clean tech in Europe at the make or break moment. And let's make the most of this make or break moment. Let's make it a break, not a make, not a break for clean tech and for climate technologies in Europe and for the whole continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.